That's so brilliant! This video is sponsored by Case Filters. Modern cameras are able to capture more different colors than the human is able to perceive. But there's anyway anything in black and white photos that is able to touch our mind. And the thing is, not every photo, not every composition works in black and white. But some photos get even better when we shoot them in black and white. So this raises the question, when is it better actually to shoot black and white? Let's find out in this video. Hi my friends, very nice to see you. It is quite interesting. When color television appeared in the 1950s, it didn't take all too long that all the black and white TVs out there got replaced by color TVs. But that was television. Photography is different. Color photography appeared already 90 years before color television, in the 1860s. But today, which is more than 160 years later, we still have the desire to shoot black and white. So there must be anything in black and white photos that color simply doesn't offer. And this is why many photographers scout for photography today already with the goal of taking black and white photos. There is nothing wrong with that, that is even great to be honest, but my personal approach to black and white photography is anyway different. You know, as a fine art photographer, my goal is to photograph the soul of a place. I don't want to get just a copy of reality or something like that. I want to create, I want to craft a piece of art. And this means my goal is that the concept of my composition reflects the soul of the particular place. And so it is not important to me if the result gets black and white or color in the end. I just want to get a photograph that embodies the soul of that scene. There are different things to consider to achieve that, but that's not the topic of this video. The question is more, when is it better to shoot black and white? When is it better to ditch color for getting a stronger fine art photograph? And the first thing we should consider here is composition. Composition is definitely a key element when we want to get a stronger image. Not only for black and white, for photography in general, I would say. Now, for me, it is really important that every single element in my compositions makes sense. Every element should add anything to the composition, to the story of my image. If it doesn't add anything, I exclude that element from my frame. And color is also just an element for me. When the color of a scene doesn't add anything to the composition, and this is tip number 1 by the way, I simply exclude it. Let me show you some quick examples. In this image here, the color adds to the story of the image. A sunbeam breaking through the clouds, the vibrant orange emphasizes the power of the light. This is what this image is all about. So I don't want to remove the color in this one. It would not work. But when we look at this image here, I mean, the light was amazing, but there was not much color definition out in the field. The color didn't add anything. And this is why it works better in black and white. Or when we look at this image here, to be honest, it would work as a black and white image too, but this enchanting color of that lake is a really important element of this image, because the color, just the color, reflects the soul of that place. It's so unique. The black and white version doesn't look bad, I have to say, but in monochrome, this image tells a completely different story. It's also something we should always think about. Which impact does it have on the story of the image when we convert it to black and white? And there are also images where the color is even the main character of the composition, like it is in this image here, for instance. The blue hour paints all these nice warm colors on the horizon, and this is what makes this image. Converting it to black and white would simply destroy it. But in this scene here, there were no appealing colors out in the field, so there was no reason for me to include color. And this is why this image here works better in black and white. But It is not only all about if color adds to an image or not. There is much more to consider. And before I will tell you that, my friends, if you like this video, please give me a thumb up. You know, it helps me, it helps the algorithm, and it helps also other photographers out there to find this video better on YouTube. Thank you therefore. So it is really a good tip to exclude color when it doesn't add. But as soon as we remove the color from a scene, it is not the same anymore. Elements which were clear to determine in a color version could start to fade away in a black and white image. This could lead to a shift in the visual weights. Their balance gets affected. And the interesting thing is, by removing color, all the lines, shapes and patterns start to get more defined. We are able to focus more on the really essential elements in the composition. We are simply not distracted anymore by color. And this is exactly the effect we want when color doesn't add. It helps us to emphasize the essence of a scene. Now, it could also be that color adds to the composition actually, but I anyway want to exclude it just because I want to emphasize the lines, shapes and patterns in the scene. And this image here is a good example here. Actually, the colors work. The lush greens of the middle build this nice harmony to the blue in the sky. I think this image works in color. It is just when I convert it to black and white, all the lines and shapes come more out. The visual flow of the monogram image works better, which holds the viewer longer in the image. But also the texture on the mountain face comes out much better. And here's also more plasticity in the image. Or in this image here, the color is fine through, but for me, the lines of the trees, the shapes of the hut and the grasses was more important than the color. And this is why I decided for black and white in this case. Well, now we know that color doesn't always add anything to our image. We know that removing color emphasizes lines, shapes and patterns, but there is more happening when we remove color. You know, technically spoken, photography is all about contrasts. Without contrasts, no photographs. It is really the contrast that forms elements in a photograph. And different colors can build a contrast to each other, which is known as color contrast. When we look at this image here, for instance, the contrasts in this one are just given by the color. If we would remove the color, let's do that, the image would not work anymore because we are not able anymore to determine elements in this scene. As humans, we get attracted by color contrasts out in the field. Yeah, I mean, it's logical. We don't live in a black and white world or so. Our world is in color. But we don't have color in a monogram image, obviously. So this means we need to focus on another contrast instead of colors. And you guessed it already, we are talking about luminance contrasts. That's the difference between bright and dark. So in our black and white composition, we want to have brighter areas amongst darker ones. This image here, for instance, just works as a black and white image because of the light spot in the midground. Again, lines, shapes and textures come out better. We are not distracted by color. And also the tonality reaches from very dark to very bright in this one. We have high contrasts and a rich tonality. Many black and white images have a quite high tonality, and I like that, I have to say. It adds dynamic to an image. But not every image needs dynamic. Some images work even better when they are harmonic. Like this image here, for instance. We still have nice contrasts between the elements. We are able to determine them. We get this nice layering effect to the distance. But there is no extreme in shadows and blacks, and also no extreme highlights and whites. That would simply not work in this tranquil scene of a sailing boat floating over the ocean. The tonality is an instrument to get control over the dynamic of an image. Important is just that we have any contrast that give enough definition to the elements so that we're able to determine them. This image here is also quite interesting. We have a high contrast between different areas. The plasticity of the hut is defined by that dark front and the middle gray on the left side of the hut. A scene like that works fantastically in black and white when we have middle gray surrounded by blacks and whites. Our eyes get drawn to areas with high contrast, which supports the flow in a composition. So images with high contrast and high tonality work often better in black and white, but it's not an essential requirement for black and white photos. Especially when it comes down to fine art photography, more often than not, we want to convey mood with our images. There are different things that affect the mood of an image, and one of it is color. So as soon as we remove the color from a composition, we automatically change the mood. Yeah, I mean, just think about a sunset or so with warm light. It is especially the color that supports that mood. And this is why considering color is really important in photography. And I made already a video about color, by the way. I will link it up here for you. However, we don't have this effect in black and white images. Black and white photos tend to support a more melancholic mood or even a dramatic mood. This image here, for instance, looks quite melancholic, doesn't it? I photographed it just a few minutes before the sun broke through. There was no direct sunlight. The mood is defined by the steamy water and the mist in the distance. Shooting it in black and white supports that melancholic mood that was already there. And just a few minutes later, the mist rose and the sunlight broke through, which led to a totally different mood of warmth, tranquility, happiness maybe. And due to the changed light, I think the second one works better in color, but the first one works much better in black and white. Removing colors supports simply the mood here. This image here is also a good example. The weather conditions and the light transform this area into a bleak landscape. Removing the color didn't only emphasize the lines and shapes here, it also supports that melancholic mood which makes this image actually. So whenever you want to emphasize the mood in an image, think about making it black and white. Mood is a really important element when we want to create a piece of art. But there is more we need when we want to craft a fine art photograph. And shooting black and white can be a quite good starting point here, I have to say. I think I've never heard any person saying something like, "Oh, what a great photograph. It is so boring. I like how the photographer conveyed this boringness in this image," or something like that. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make all too much sense, right? In fine art photography, we want to achieve the opposite actually. We want to convey, the extraordinary. We don't want to show the boring reality which everyone sees already all the time, just when he looks out of the window to any daytime. We want to show the extraordinary scenes. And this doesn't necessarily mean that our subjects need to be extraordinary. I mean, there could be, it would help, but we could also transform normal landscape scenes to something spectacular, just by considering extraordinary light, for instance, which is given by extraordinary weather or extraordinary daytimes. Just think about how amazing the light is at sunrise or sunset. Most people lie in their warm beds in daytimes like that, so it is perceived as something special. It could also be the extraordinary camera angle or the extraordinary interaction between several elements in our composition. We want extraordinariness. I hope this is a word, by the way. I'm not a native English speaker, I'm more a creative English speaker. When a word doesn't exist, I simply create it. However, extraordinariness, that is what we want. And in fine art photography, it is a good idea to support this extraordinariness also in post-processing. It is not only allowed to get a photograph more abstract, it is even wished more or less, depending on the artistry concept you use. We will talk about that in a minute. The problem is just when we go too far in post-processing, we risk sliding into over-editing. I think everyone who tried already to push the clarity slider to the very right knows what I mean by that. But interesting is that as soon as we turn a photo to black and white, that has automatically created a completely abstract version of reality just by removing color. And ultimately, we get immediately an extraordinary style when we convert an image to black and white. And that's exactly that ingredient we need for getting a fine art photograph: extraordinariness. So if you want to give that extraordinary touch to an image, consider going to black and white. And by the way, a cool thing at black and white photos is also it gets even more unlikely to over-edit a black and white photo than a color photo. I mean, it's logical. A color photo is always more associated with reality than a black and white photo, which is more seen as the abstract version of reality. Yeah, just because it's black and white. So if you tend to over-edit your image, try it with black and white. It's also really a good tip, by the way. But it is not done just by converting an image to black and white. It is important to understand how you can support the image with your editing. And therefore we need to understand the different artistry concepts of fine art photography. That's really, really important. I made already a comprehensive video about the artistry concept of photography. I will link it here for you. And friends, I hope you liked this video. If yes, share it with your friends. Don't forget to tune in next week. There will come a fantastic video as well. And thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Bye.